Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's virtual meeting of the DNC Credentials Committee. As a reminder, this is an official meeting of the committee. We are live streaming these proceedings on the DNC YouTube channel, and these proceedings are also being transcribed by our court reporter so that we can have an official record of our deliberations. I hereby call this meeting of the Credentials Committee to order. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ryan Ramirez, co-chair of the Credentials Committee, and I'm joined by my fellow co-chair, Supervisor Hilda Solis. Before we begin, I want to personally welcome Hilda to her first meeting as a co-chair of the Credentials Committee. Hilda has a wealth of experience in public service, including service in both chambers of the California State Legislature, the United States House of Representatives, President Obama's cabinet, and now the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. We are so lucky to have her serving with us on the Credentials Committee, and I look forward to her leadership. Welcome, Co-Chair Solis.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for that introduction. And if everyone will please join me and stand so we can begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. So if you'll please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Someday. Yeah.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the determination of a quorum. I will ask our parliamentarian, Helen McFadden, to call the roll. Members now have the ability to unmute for the roll call. When Helen calls your name, please unmute and announce your presence. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start the roll call. Mr. Aguilar.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Barnes.
I am present.
Thank you. Mr. Buckley.
I'm here.
Thank you. Ms. Davis. I don't see her. Mr. Dignan.
I think I'm in the wrong breakout room.
Here.
This is Barbara Brooks. So I need to try to get.
No, Barbara, we're out of that room now.
Okay, is Ms. Davis here? Let's go back to that. Mr. Dignan.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Fry. Ms. George.
Jason from Sweden.
Ah. Mr. Goff.
Here.
Ms. Hernandez-Matz. Mr. Jacobs has given his proxy to Ms. Barnes. Mr. Cap.
Here.
Mr. Lee.
Lee present.
Thank you. Ms. Long Hong.
I'm here.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Lucas.
I'm present.
Thank you. Mr. Mallory. Okay. Ms. Maxwell. Sarah McBride has given her proxy to Mr. Buckley. Mr. Middleton. Mr. Newman, I'm sorry. Mr. Newman.
I am present.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Pelosi.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Pinsky.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Pringle. Ms. Rollins.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Ruiz.
Okay.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Valdez?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Walters has given his proxy to Clay Middleton. Has Clay come in?
I'm here. And I'm also present.
Oh, Mr. Walters is here as well?
Yes, in the event that I need to leave early. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You certainly have more than the 12 for a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Next up is co-chair Solis.
Thank you, Helen. We have a quorum. Per our charter and bylaws, a quorum is constituted by 40% of 12 credentials, and we have more. Committee members present in person or by proxy. Before we get underway, I want to recognize the team who supports the committee. In addition to Helen, to whom we are grateful, we're joined by the Party Affairs Department and DNC Council, Andy, Levan, and I also would like to thank the technical support team, Wymoth Watson. Thank you everyone for helping to make sure our meeting runs smoothly today. And as we move into the business of the meeting, please keep in mind that members will be muted until they are recognized to speak, at which point they will be introduced and unmuted.
I do.
If a member would like to be recognized for comments or questions, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or send a chat to Jenna Whitaker. When you raise your hand or send your chat to Jenna, she will create a queue of pending speakers. When it is your turn to speak, she will be announced and unmuted, or you will be announced and unmuted, I'm sorry. Our rules for the work of the committee have been forwarded to each member of the committee. These are the same rules we have used for some time in the committee. The chair will ask for approval of these rules as forwarded to you. Is there a motion to adopt these rules for the hearing today?
Yeah.
I heard a motion and a second.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Is there objection to adoption of the rules as printed and distributed to the committee? Hearing none. Thank you. The rules of procedure are adopted. We will now hear an overview of the challenge, followed by a summary of the hearing process before we move into the hearing itself. But before we begin, do any members have questions? Please raise your hand via the Zoom now. Are there any questions? Seeing none?
Yeah, there does not appear to be any questions.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions, we will move to new business. And if I can begin, today we'll consider the challenges to the DNC credentials of Mississippi Democratic Party Chair Schick Taylor. The challenges were filed by Judge Tyree Irving, Roosevelt Yarborough, Everett Sanders, Jean and Sharon Baines, and each challenge alleges irregularities in the removal of Judge Irving as the chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party and Mr. Taylor's election to fill this position during an emergency virtual meeting last July. Pursuant to our rules, the challenge was deferred to the state party for its consideration last year. After the state party dismissed the challengers appealed to this committee. I would like to acknowledge the representatives from the challengers and respondents before they begin their presentations. Appearing on behalf of the challengers are the following: Tyree Irving, Honorable Everett Sanders, Mr. Roosevelt Yarborough, Miss Lovey West, Reverend Marshall Coleman, Miss Mamie Cunningham, Mrs. Mala Brooks, Mrs. Deborah Delgado, Mrs. Doris Miller, Mrs. Kathy Sykes, Mr. Curly Clark, Mrs. Barbara Brooks, and Mrs. Tanya Gray, and the Honorable Willie Griffin. Appearing on behalf of the respondents are the following: Vicki Slater, Esquire, Chair Schick Taylor, Vice Chair Jody Brown, Andre Wagner, James Hull, Jamie Franks, Esquire, Andre DeBerry, David Rushing, and Bill Wheeler. Our committee rules of procedure set forth the process for how we consider challenges. The committee rules of procedure were provided in the meeting materials. Now, DNC counsel Andrea Levent will provide an overview of the hearing process as provided in the rules. I turn it over.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Parties and members of the committee, the DNC bylaws vest this committee with the authority to determine the validity of the credentials of those elected to the DNC. When deciding any challenge, the committee must provide each party a reasonable opportunity to be heard and may give an opportunity for the submission of briefs and oral argument. The Credentials Committee rules of procedure govern the conduct of committee business. The rules provide that they should be interpreted so that they promote the fair, expedient, and efficient conduct of the committee. The committee's rules provide that after consideration of a challenge by the state party and an appeal of the state party's decision, the co-chairs may schedule an open and public hearing on the specific factual and legal matters in dispute. The hearing may be conducted by a hearing officer or by the Credentials Committee itself. When hearings are conducted by the committee, the co-chairs in the committee assume all of the authority granted to the hearing officer under the committee's rules of procedure. As such, this committee has all the powers necessary to conduct the hearing in such a manner so as to secure the just, speedy, and inexpensive determination of the challenge. Additionally, the co-chairs may take such actions as may be necessary to carry out the committee's rules or to facilitate the effective operation of the committee. The committee has the authority to receive all competent evidence relevant to the specific matters in dispute and to assign the appropriate weight to such evidence. As such, the co-chairs have provided the parties with the opportunity to submit written briefs and documentary evidence to this committee for its consideration. This material was distributed to each member last week. The co-chairs also informed the parties that they have been allotted 45 minutes each to present oral testimony and argument for the committee's consideration. The co-chairs have not narrowed the issues that may be raised during these presentations. However, since only members of the committee may propose motions, the committee will not grant or deny any dispositive procedural requests during the parties' presentations. Rather, if either party requests committee action that could dispose of the challenge or substantively affect the results of the challenge, such action will only be debated if the motion is made by a member of the committee after both presentations have been completed. As the parties each have only 45 minutes to present, please hold all questions and comments until after both presentations. After the parties have made their presentations, the committee may engage in up to 30 minutes of discussion and debate, during which time members may address questions to either party's representatives. Following debate, the co-chairs will recognize a committee member for the purpose of offering a resolution to dispose of the challenge, which may be debated for up to 20 minutes, split evenly between proponents and opponents. At the conclusion of the debate, the resolution will be put to a vote. A majority is required to adopt a resolution disposing of the challenge. In the event the first proposed resolution is not adopted, the co-chairs will continue to recognize committee members for the purpose of offering resolutions disposing of the challenge until the challenge is disposed of. Thank you in advance for your work today.
Thank you, Andy. The challenging parties are now recognized to present their case. You will have 45 minutes. You may reserve 5 minutes of time for rebuttal. And so I'm going to turn it over to the challengers, and please proceed.
I need to be okay. Let me so thank you to the committee and the co-chairs for this hearing this afternoon to resolve a challenge that was filed August 5, 2023, a challenge that the Mississippi after being deferred to the Mississippi Democratic Party in December, failed to act, and we appealed on January, I believe, 3rd of 2024. And here it is, April 26th. So we are happy to have this opportunity to get it disposed of. But let me take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about who I am. You know my name. You know I'm a retired judge of 20 years at the State Court of Appeals in Mississippi. But what I'm most proud of the fact is that I have been and am a lifelong Democrat, and my work when I was allowed to do so. On the bench, you could not participate in partisan politics. But I served on the Democratic National Committee some 28, 29 years ago when I was elected Mississippi's National Committeeman, I believe in 1996. That was a challenge to this committee, not the same persons, of course, but to the DNC's committee, Credentials Committee, challenging the decision, electing me National Committeeman. Of course, I won that challenge, but shortly thereafter, I think about 2 years, I ran for the appellate bench and was elected. I'm a product of the Delta, the Mississippi Delta, have been there all of my life, except for a little over a year or so when I worked as an Earl Warren Fellow with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in New York. I returned to Mississippi and have been there ever since. I was elected as chair of the LaFleur County Democratic Executive Committee in the 90s and served in that position until I was elected to the bench in 1998. After retiring from the Mississippi Court of Appeals at the end of December 2018, I was looking forward to my retirement. You may know from the documents that in a couple of months, I'll be 78 years old. But I got a call from some folks who asked me, would I be willing to serve as chairman of the Mississippi Democratic Party? I don't really know why I decided to do that, other than the fact that I'm a servant leader. I have all of my life worked to try to make life better for those who are less fortunate. Mississippi has a great potential, but not under the leadership that has been existing for the however many years when I was nestled away on the bench. Now, let me be clear. I want the committee now to look at Exhibit C. That's a petition that a number of members of the State Executive Committee signed in an effort, I guess, to remove me from office. But pay attention to what it says. The undersigned members, purpose to address the long-standing and repeated actions of malfeasance and misfeasance of the chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party. Not before that petition was circulated, if you can call it a petition. I'm not going to take issues with the lack of sufficiency of the petition. I'm going to move past that. At no time was I ever advised of any actions or inactions on my part prior to the circulation of that petition. And the day is April 26. I have never been advised. And to charge me with malfeasance and misfeasance are serious charges. Absolutely no due process. And I categorically deny that I'm guilty of any misconduct and certainly no illegal conduct. For 3 years of my retirement time, when I should have been having time with my newly arrived grandson, I worked hard and diligently trying to do something in Mississippi that I know could be done with the proper leadership. And I won't go into all of those details, but for almost 3 years, I did that. The next thing I want you to notice is Article 15 of the Mississippi Democratic Party, and that's exhibit, give me a minute, I think it's Exhibit A, it is. Exhibit A, Article 15. The most recent edition of Robert Rules of Order shall govern all conventions and meetings of any unit of the Democratic Party of Mississippi. I would point out that according to my research, the latest edition of Robert Rules of Order that was in effect on July the 6th, 2023, was the 12th edition. The 12th edition of Robert Rules of Order was the latest edition. And if you were to look at section 62 through 15, 62:15 through 63.37, it provides for the process of removing an officer. None of that was afforded me. It's very detailed in Robert Rules of Order what you must do. They did not do any of that. Let's see, where's my time? I'm trying to see, we got 33 minutes left, so I have taken 12 minutes. So let me try to run on. I'll move on. The only other thing I'd like for you to do is look, I want Exhibit E. This is a email that I sent to the members of the Mississippi Democratic Party on July the 2nd, 4 days prior to the July 6th meeting. And I will not read it all because of the shortness of time here, but I want to share. Dear committee member, I am grateful for your support of me as your chairman for almost 3 years. I, like you, know that we have had some unusual challenges during this time, but by the grace and mercy of God, we have survived. The past week has been very stressful for me and especially my family due to the circulation of false and misleading information impugning my name and reputation while we are trying to plan for a successful election this year. In December 2018, I retired and was looking forward to spending time with my family and doing some much needed traveling, leisure traveling. I owed that to my family. I owed this to my family because my family had been so supportive of me while I pursued my professional career. My post-retirement plans were put on temporary hold because of COVID, and the plans with traveling was put on hold. But let me skip down to a portion of it, but I invite you to read the entire email if you have not done so. Regrettably today, I must inform you of my intent to resign as chairman effective at midnight, July 22nd, 2023. Therefore, I'm calling a meeting for July 22nd, 2023 for you to accept my resignation and elect a new chairperson who must be an African-American, et cetera, because of the Constitution. I recognize the importance of a smooth transition because the work of the party must continue. Therefore, I, in consultation with our able and capable Executive Vice Chair, Honorable Bill Wheeler, will immediately appoint a transition committee to work with me and the staff to carry out the transition process while developing an aggressive plan to support Democratic candidates up and down the ticket. The agenda items, and I'll let you read the rest of it. Now, I had discussed this with Mr. Wheeler prior to sending it to the full committee. And my recollection of that conversation with him, that was just fine. When he got it and we talked again, he asked me whether I could move my resignation up. I said, of course I could. I said, we can do it on the 15th of July. I said, the only reason I didn't do it on the 15th in the first place is because an able county chair up in Lee County had asked me, was planning a fundraiser for our candidate for governor, and he'd asked if I would attend, and I had promised him I would be there. So I didn't want to rain on his parade because I was planning to be there and participate. And that's the only reason. He said, well, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. When he got back to me, these were his words. Those ladies want to continue with the petition. And that was that. The last thing I'd like to say, you need a copy of the recording of the video, of the virtual meeting that was held on July the 6th. And if you will look at exhibit, just a minute here, Exhibit G, I requested a copy of that recording. I believe I sent that email out to the people who initiated the process, along with other folks that you'll see in the email. I sent that on July 31st, 2023. Mrs. Sanders, Honorable Everett Sanders, who I will yield to in a minute, sent a request out to the committee, to the administrative committee there on July the 10th, I believe. And with that, since I have taken up, oh my God, more time than I should, I yield to Mr. Sanders. I said I yield to Mr. Everett. Okay.
One of the important things for the committee to look at, we have rules, and the rules are in place for a purpose. And in this instance, we have an allegation of malfeasance on the part of Chairman Irving. And malfeasance is an act that is illegal and causes physical harm or monetary harm to someone else. Chairman Irving has served with distinction and has a splendid reputation. The need for a hearing was important in the face of that allegation. Not only was he not informed of what constituted a purported malfeasance and misfeasance, he was not given an opportunity at the meeting to address that, to allow people to ask questions. There was nothing that was in place that allowed committee members to inquire as to what was the basis for this action. The control of the meeting rested with the executive director or some other person, and they would cut off persons who were trying to inquire or make statements. And we believe, and we rightfully so, that this was an egregious denial of what is commonly known as due process. A notice of the charges against you and the right to be heard. And we would urge the committee to require the production of the tape of that particular meeting. It'll answer every question and support every allegation that we've made. And with that, I'll
yield to Mr. Yarbrough.
Yield to Mr. Yarbrough.
Thank you.
I can't hear him.
I am muted, I do believe.
We can't hear Mr. Yarborough.
No, I believe he's unmuted. So, Mr. Yarborough, if you could proceed.
Thank you to the honorable chairman of this committee and other honorable members. I would like to thank you for this opportunity. One of the key things, I am the elected parliamentarian for the Mississippi Democrat Executive Committee. And one of the things that I was not given an opportunity to try to bring order to the meeting, and as much as it had been called and was in existence, there was chaos and no named chairperson who was supposed to be chairing the meeting, at least not one with any type of authority that had been given to them by the full body. Whatever took place had taken place prior to July 6th. For whatever reason, some people was notified about it prior to the notification deadline. And if I remember correctly, the proper period of notice was not given. The full committee was not notified of the meeting until just a few days before the meeting, as opposed to the required 10-day notice. That within itself would make the meeting improper and out of place. Each member should have been given that notice, that proper notice, that there would be a meeting. It should have been listed also what items were to serve with that committee meeting, and that was not done. The meeting, after the meeting had started, members of the committee, including myself, tried to get an opportunity to speak, and we was not given that opportunity. And even in spite of the fact that they had no idea what we would be speaking about, it was lined up who was going to speak, when they was going to speak, and who else would get the opportunity to speak. And anybody that some of the committee members felt that was not going to speak in their favor, whether they were or not, they was not allowed to speak. And that was another violation of the Constitution for the state of Mississippi. And we had requested that all of these things be put in place that was, in fact, a part of the Constitution for the state of Mississippi. And if my memory served me well, it's also a requirement from the national Constitution. And that's what's making chaos. Because if you're not going to allow people to speak, as stated in the Constitution, then why have the Constitution in the first place? The other thing that was ironic about the whole meeting, it was not that it had to be on a certain date, but it made me curious. I have some curiosity about the fact when I look at January the 6th, and then I look at July 6th, and I don't know whether that's telling us anything or not, but that's a good example to remember the fact that the J6s appeared in the process. And that is very disappointing to me, and it's very disappointing that we would come that close to carrying on something that we know somebody else created that has no respect for the law whatsoever. And I hope that the committee will, in fact, look very carefully at that, because as long as we accept that type of conduct, we'll never make progress in this state, because we had a great opportunity to elect a Democrat for governor of the state of Mississippi, and all of this bad publicity kept coming up in the paper, and it shot all of that down because people were saying, well, that's no better than what the Republican is going to give us if we go with him. So those are very dangerous issues. You know, we have people that claim to be Democrats, but at the same time, they conduct themselves as Republicans. And as hard as some of us have worked in this state over the years, and I don't mean just 2023, we are continuously to come up empty. And with 18 minutes and about 50 seconds, I'm going to yield to, who am I supposed to yield to? The next speaker.
This is Lovey West, and I bring greetings to the leadership of this committee. My statement is brief. The challenge I have is not to an individual person, and it never has been, but it has been the process and whether or not the person has been given due process. The concern is not just for today, but what impact this will have on the future of the Democratic Party, not only in Mississippi, but elsewhere. That concludes my statement, and I do apologize, I'm driving, and I now yield to the next person. Thank you.
Greetings, Reverend Coleman is speaking. Greetings to this committee. And I just cut to the chase. I wanted to say that Chairman, our former Chairman Tyree Irving withdrew his nomination, his resignation before this meeting came. So I had to say that because there was no vacancy. There was no vacancy to be filled. Again, Article 4 of our Constitution, subsection 5, vacancies of the Executive Committee may be filled by majority vote of members present and voting at a duly called or regularly called meeting, not less than 30 days after notice of the filing of vacancies is given. Due process was not afforded. Subsection 6, same article, the seat of any member of any party unit, executive committee shall be declared vacant by 2/3 vote of those members present and voting at any regular scheduled or called meeting of the executive committee upon the happening of one of the following. And he was charged with malfeasance and misfeasance, but he was not afforded the opportunity to address those charges. Subsection 7, and I'll be quick. Article 4, provided that before the seat of any committee member is declared vacant, all members of the executive committee and the accused member whose seat is proposed to be vacated shall be given 30 days written notice, specifying the cause or causes in reasonable detail, date, place, accuser, and witness thereof. The accused member whose seat is proposed to be vacated may make a written request for a hearing. None of that was afforded Mr. Irving. Anytime within the first 20 days of such notice, but the written request for hearing shall be received by the secretary of the committee and a copy thereof by the chairperson of the committee not later than 10 days. Mr. Yarber spoke of that prior to the date of such meeting of said executive committee. And so all of this was, for a better word, was circumvented, and we jumped all the way to Article 8 and removed Mr. Irving without due process I yield the rest of my time to the next speaker.
Am I the next speaker? I guess I am. I'll be brief. I want to say that I endorse what Mr. Coleman has said and Mr. Yarborough has said. My problem was with all the things that they have stated. In addition to that, I tried to ask a question and I was muted each time I tried to ask. I think they called my name 3 times to vote. The vote was called by David Russian, and I think James Hall was serving as chair. And before they could get my name called, before I could answer, they had gone to the next person because I was muted. So they came back again. The second time it happened. It just so happened I was able to vote on the 3rd call of my name because I was unmuted at that time. I also attempted to ask questions about the Constitution, about what Mr. Coleman had just said, 5 and 6 of Article 4. All of that was ignored. Those articles of the Constitution was not enforced. They skipped to number 8, I believe, or number 10. And I think I asked a specific question about the 35%. On number 11 of the Constitution, that when the committee met, let me back up just a little bit. I never knew what was the emergency. I was trying to ask that question. What was the emergency of this meeting? Why was it called? Since the chair had also decided to resign. And I never could get into the discussion to ask these questions. The parliamentarian couldn't get in. Couldn't any of us get in? There was no due process in this meeting. It was a coup. I yield to the next person.
I was unable to want to thank you for having this hearing. If it's going to actually happen or not, but I am grateful. In Mississippi, in that meeting, my biggest concern was, and I was allowed to speak, but when I asked that question and they did not let me speak anymore, my hand was raised. And so it comes across, this was done by design. We had a very important election coming up. We had an opportunity to get a Democrat elected as governor for the state of Mississippi. And we actually lost little at 30,000 votes, but it shows so much division. And so it comes across as, people playing real strange politics in our party to ensure that we did not get a Democrat governor. But then it comes to my concerns about the future. And if this is not addressed where Democrats don't have a vote, it's going to be a sad day, not only in Mississippi, but spread on other states. And so we came that close to get the blue state. I think we had to take some strong decisions, real rules on how we move forward. And I look forward to the next week.
Okay, my name is Deborah Delgado, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm concerned about the timeliness of this matter, but I guess it's better late than never. My concern from that meeting was that, of course, there was no due process, and I was just appalled at the spirit of it. It was not a situation where we were allowed to ask questions or make comments about how this process was running or how terrible it was going. It was as if, someone said a coup. That's what it felt like, that there was a coup, that there had been specific, clear prior planning to get rid of the chair. And in my experience, for the time that I've been involved in organized politics with the Democratic Party, Justice Irving's tenure has been one that I felt was most productive, and it enabled meaningful participation, at least on my part anyway. And I just felt that he was trying to take us in the direction that he promised to when he was asking people to vote for him. And one of the things that got me is, after that meeting, I polled some of the people who abstained and even some of those who voted in favor of the coup. Many of them did not have an understanding of what the problem was. They were led to believe that the party was going downhill and it all rests on the shoulders of the chairman. But that was not the case. And our poor performance in this election is an indication that these people did not do the right thing. We performed better when Mike Espy ran. We had more votes, in the state of Mississippi than were gotten during this time. And it was like, if we get rid of Judge Irving, we're going to be able to produce all these votes. That didn't happen. It was because of this coup. I yield the rest of my time.
Ms. Miller?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I would like to say, and I know we don't have that much time, but thank you so much for having this very, very important meeting. And I agree with all of the previous speakers in saying that Chairman Irving did not have due process. And I do believe that it was a coup. Things that disturbed me the evening of the meeting was that I was never informed beforehand that the emergency meeting was a meeting to remove Chairman Irving from his position as chair and to elect Mr. Sheikh Taylor as chair. The other thing is, I recall the evening of the meeting, several committee members were requested an explanation of the malfeasance and the misfeasance, and it was never addressed. And I thought that was very important. I also recall committee members in the midst of a discussion, and to my recollection, Mr. Jamie Franks directed Mr. Sheikh Taylor to end the meeting while committee members were in the midst of a discussion, and he did so. And I just want to say that I was so embarrassed during that meeting to see Democrats acting the way that they were acting. And we were right in the midst of a major election, and to have something like this happen when Chairman Irving had volunteered to resign prior to this happening and did not do so because they were very loyal Democrats who reached out to the Chairman Irving at the time, and say, please, sir, do not do this because we're in the middle of a major election and you only have just a short period of time left to serve. And he obliged us and withdrew his resignation. And I just want to say to Chairman Irving, I was so grateful. And I know a lot of other Democrats and committee members were grateful as well. So I will stop here and yield to the next speaker.
Hello, everyone. I just want to say that I had a question also about the charges of malfeasance and misfeasance. To this day, I don't know what that means. I attempted to ask the question during the hearing, what does this mean? And no one responded. It's imperative that Judge Irving clears his name. As a retired judge, he could be called back for service at any time to serve as a judge, and to have a charge of misfeasance and malfeasance, whatever that means, that needs to be cleared from his name. And I know some folk, because of the time constraint, think that this is a frivolous act that we're upon to try to clear his name. And I say it's not. And I also want to say that I was removed from my position as chair of voter registration committee and I had not resigned. But anyway, I'm going to stop now because we have 5 minutes left and we need time to rebut.
Yes, ma'am. You have just to be clear, you have 5 minutes or the 4 minutes and 41 seconds now left, as well as the reserved 5 minutes. But did want to call that out. But you are, getting short on time.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I was removed from my position as chair of voter registration education for the state committee, and I never resigned. And I don't know if that's common practice, but I see that as hurting the party, the continuity of service. When the chair changed, you changed the committee chairs, and all of them were not changed, but the ones that supported Chairman Irving were changed. And I'm a former state representative. I served in the House of Representatives with our Chairman Chuck Taylor. He's a wonderful person, and he's middle of some mess. And I just wanted to say that. But the folk who are old, long-time Democrats, they know the process, they know the procedure, and I think they took advantage of the situation by not allowing due process for Chairman Irving. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Barbara Brooks, and I'm from Washington County, Mississippi. I'm going to be very brief. I just want to echo the sentiments that have been expressed by others on this committee, that there was a clear disregard for proper procedures and a failure to recognize the core democratic principle of the Mississippi Democratic Party. It was also evident that those presiding over this meeting failed to adhere to established protocols, including conducting a fair and open discussion on matters presented to the committee. Such things as non-compliance of the Robert Rules of Order, anti-democratic behavior. The disregard for the democratic principles undermines the foundation upon which this party stands. And I just want to say that I've been on the committee for over 3 terms, and this was the first time that I've experienced any disregard for proper procedures, the state constitution. I was just appalled at what was going on. I yield to the next person.
That's great.
I just want to say that I was on that call that night, and I've never seen anything like that. My thing is if this stands, it will be a precedent for how we conduct ourselves in the future, and we just can't operate like that. And that's why I'm here. I mainly want us to have order and order about the way we do things. And I hope I never see anything as chaotic and unfair as what I saw that night at the Democratic, at that meeting. As I say, we don't want to set a precedent for what about the next time somebody is this the way we're going to do it? I hope not. I yield to the next person.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes, look like we're running out of time.
You got 39 seconds. So anything past that runs into your additional, the time reserve, the 5 minutes reserve.
Well, we're going to have to run into the additional time. Let me just say, I've been practicing law in this state for 44 years. And I've spent devoted a lot of time representing governmental entities. I've been on this committee since the 90s. I've served as parliamentarian. I've served for a long time as chair of the second CD. And this was easily the most despicable case of lack of due process I have ever seen. I've handled a lot of due process cases in federal court and in state courts. as
sorry,
well
sir.
as doing administrative hearings. I've never seen anything like this. To
You're at
suggest,
time, sir.
sir,
You're at time, sir.
can we go into the last 5 minutes?
If you go into the last 5 minutes, you're eating into your time for rebuttal time.
Yes, yes. I do think we need to go into it. There was a total lack of due process. First of all, there was no notice. Secondly, there was no emergency established. Thirdly, people like myself were precluded from participating even at the meeting, thanks to the opposition. Now, the bylaws, the Constitution, and Robert's Rules of Order both each mandate that you got to give notice and an opportunity to be heard. Yet, Judge Urban was not given any notice. The members, when they were summoned, were not given any notice. And I challenged the other side during their presentation to show us where those notices were given, to show us where Judge Urban was given the notice of charges and an opportunity to respond to those charges. I challenged them to produce even the video to show us where that was done. If we're going to remain a Democratic Party, both state, local, and national, then the Credentials Committee here has to do the right thing and make a finding that this was a blatant violation of the Mississippi State Party Constitution and certainly the national Constitution, because this was grossly unfair. How dare anyone accuse me or anybody, and especially a distinguished judge, of malfeasance and does not give that person an opportunity to challenge that despicable charge? You might as well accuse him of having committed fraud or theft, because essentially that's what you're doing. What was the malfeasance? It's too late to explain it now because you haven't given them an opportunity. They can't come before this committee and for the first time, and I suspect that's what they're going to do, for the first time, try to put on evidence to justify what they did. The time to justify was when you give notice to Judge Urban, give him an opportunity to participate at a due process hearing, and you put on your evidence, give him an opportunity to respond.
But you're not going to have any time to respond if you don't wrap it up.
I'll close at this point then. Thank you. That's all I have.
Now I think we move on to my co-chair to follow up. Sorry, as I stutter.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ryan. That concludes the presentation by the challenging parties, and now we're moving on to the challenged party is now recognized to present their arguments, and they will have 45 minutes and 10 seconds and no rebuttal. And we start with, I believe, Vicky Slater.
Chairman Solis.
Yes.
I'm Gerald Mumford. I am the attorney for the Mississippi State Party. I'd like to begin and then give Ms. Slater an opportunity to speak along with our other presenters. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? I assume they can.
Yes, sir.
My name is Gerald Mumford. I'm the counsel for the Democratic Party for the state of Mississippi. And it's an honor to appear before this body as it looks so much like America and coincidentally, Mississippi. We're here today, not by our choice. I have so many other good friends on the other side, but we need to talk about some of the misfeasance, the malfeasance, the lack of the due process that was given to Mr. Irving. and the chaotic nature of the meeting that took place last year. One thing that we agree with the other party, the contestants, is that the meeting was chaotic. At least 3 or 4 people from the contender side mentioned chaos. The state constitution allows for, during the COVID, to have meetings via Zoom. It's hard to have a parliamentarian take folks out of a meeting that's virtual. The only way you can create some kind of normalcy is to mute people. But let's get started with some of the background of why we're here today. And that background, I've heard the word coup many times. Well, there was a coup, then Chairman Irvin was the leader of that coup. During the middle of a major election, an election that the party should have won this year for governor, Mr. Irvin was quoted in a paper that went statewide. Everybody in the state was talking about emails that he had sent to the executive director in this matter. It was widely published, widely embarrassing, and so on and so forth. I'll read some of the excerpts to you. And these emails were printed in publication throughout the state of Mississippi. Wagner, you do not speak for the chair. You are out of order, Irvin wrote. I'm an accomplished jurist. I know and understand things that you cannot know or understand because you do not have the education level. You do not possess the personal or vicarious experience that I have. And you know nothing about the historical political landscape of Mississippi. You are not in a position to speak for the Mississippi Democratic Party or say how the Mississippi Democratic Party will spend any funds without being granted that authority to speak. And it has not been granted to you. You are a salaried employee and nothing else. You need to find your place and stay in it. That was Chairman Irving's email to his subordinate that got wide publication across the state of Mississippi. You saw Chairman Irving mentioned in one of his exhibits today, and that exhibit was a resignation letter. It was, because he was embarrassed, and every Democrat in the state of Mississippi was embarrassed reading it when we had such a good chance to win that election last year. It started, regrettably, today, I must inform you of my intent to resign. Those emails were why Mr. Irvin tendered his resignation. But he tendered his resignation and at the same time wanted to orchestrate his passing of the baton. That created the emergency of the meeting that was held on, I believe, July the 6th. So people talk about due process, people talk about notice. Article 4 of the Mississippi state constitution says, and it calls for a emergency meeting upon things such as malfeasance, misfeasance, or nonfeasance in office, as well as resignation. So there was a protocol for calling for the special election, the special meeting. The requisite number of signatures on the petition was there, okay? It was there, and so a meeting was held. But this is not foreign to Chairman Irvin, because back in 2020, he participated in this similar act, okay? I asked the people in charge of the exhibits to go to the notice of call meeting for 2020, 2024. I sent it over today. Four-page document. It's not in. It says notice of call meeting of the Mississippi Democratic Executive Committee by 25% of the membership. That's it right there. All right. So back in 2020, Chairman Irvin, who you'll see his signature on the second page, I'm sorry, the third page, participated in a special call meeting in 2020 that allowed him to become the chairman in 2020. So Bobby Moe was the chairman at that time. He, along with others, including Tyree Irving, gained the proper amount of signatures to have a special emergency meeting. Okay, so you can take that offline now. So there's precedence for that. There was the necessary signatures to put this matter before the executive committee. You've heard already, and the witnesses that will testify on behalf of the party will testify that the meeting was completely meeting. The person had an opportunity to discuss the matter. The meeting lasted an hour and a half until a vote was called. And that vote was, I believe, it was a quorum was met. And the vote to remove the chairman was 45 to 22. 45 to 22. But also there was a second vote that was held. A second vote was held. So of the 80-member executive committee, 67 members, at least 67 members attended that meeting. So a quorum was met. Okay. And a similar vote took place to name the new chairman of the party. Well, guess what? Chairman Irvin was nominated, among others, including our new chairman and our present chairman, Chuck Taylor, for that position. So folks talk about a coup. Well, there were two votes held that day. Vote to remove Chairman Irving and a vote to replace him or to name a new chairman. A similar vote was held. So you had more than 2/3 people attend, and the more than 2/3 of the folks who were attended also voted for Chuck Taylor to be the new chairman. Okay. So we have exhausted every reasonable opportunity to have Mr. Irving come before the body and explain all of these matters. I also want to talk about Chairman Irving on September the 20th, 2023, in the middle of an election cycle, filed a lawsuit against the state Democratic Party. That lawsuit has gone nowhere, but it served as a distraction for every single candidate in Mississippi running for office. He filed that lawsuit in Hinds County, and nothing has happened in that lawsuit. He's just served probably one of the last defendants this week on that. Okay. An appeals committee was convened to hear Chairman Irving's complaints on 12/13/2023. Mr. Irving did not show up. Mr. Yarbrough didn't show up. None of the people that are here present speaking on his behalf today showed up at that appeals hearing. So there was a way for Mr. Irving to appeal and exhaust his administrative remedies. He didn't appeal. He didn't bother to show up. That committee's decision was later ratified by the 80-member Democratic Executive Committee in January 6, 2024. And so, time and time again, Chairman Irvin has had an opportunity to speak. He's had an opportunity to present his case, and he has not taken advantage of that. And so there's been talk. See, I just want to go through my notes here. There's talks of Robert Rules of Order. You can't have Robert's Rules of Order on Zoom when there are 80 people talking and calling names and using racial terms and causing further division in a party. The requisite amount of time was given for folks to complain, and folks to ask questions, and folks to get clarification. Well, ultimately, a vote was called. Mr. Irving was removed as the chairman. A new chairman election was held, and Chuck Taylor won the vote total. I now yield to Vicki Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Mumford. I wanted to say that I want to address first the so-called absence of due process. There, due process requires notice. You are required to give notice. Which was given. It was given by Chairman Irving when he filed sent out his letter of resignation. This is after everything that had happened in the newspaper, just an abusive letter about our executive director and a total embarrassment in the state to the Democratic Party, which was on the verge of, as Mr. Mumford said, a gubernatorial election. Mr. Irving did not need notice because he gave notice that he was leaving. Now, Mr. Irving, in an unreasonable manner, believed that he could set the date of his leaving, the way his replacement would be handled, and to have input on his replacement. This is not characteristic of the way that business is done in the United States. When you give your resignation, then it becomes up to the group, the company or the organization that you are serving to say, okay, we agree that you can stay until that date or we don't. Now, he already had noticed that he needed to leave earlier and that he was going to be asked to leave earlier. So due process requires notice, and notice was abundant in this case, and he started it. He had given his intention to resign more than once, and so the party, being totally embarrassed and just worn out by his leadership, I suppose, just wanted to go ahead and call it. I was not involved in those conversations about that. My husband had been sick for a long time, and I lost him in June of 23. So many of another problem was that a young lawyer, not licensed anywhere, a law student, was allowed to tell everybody on the phone that a malfeasance is a crime and that we have to name a crime. And every lawyer on that call knew that a malfeasance is not necessarily a crime, that was an overbroad statement made to mislead the supporters of Chairman Irving. And it was serious, and not one lawyer corrected her or called her back from giving legal advice without a license. Chairman Irving was a judge for 28 years. Okay, he's been back in the party 6 years. When he was in the party before, there was no internet, there was no vote builder, there was no so many of the things that we use now in politics. Yet, those of us who had been involved, he wouldn't listen to about how to do things. I was vice chair, elected at the same time by the same people that he was elected chair by. And I, as vice chair, I was supposed to have statewide vote builder because one of my jobs is to educate people on vote builder and to get out the vote. But he cut me off of vote builder because, you know, he didn't know what a vice chair does. So he says he's an accomplished jurist. Yes, but what we needed was an accomplished party chair. And that's what we feel like we have now. Most of the misbehaviors that people complained of happened in everyone's presence, including Mr. Sanders and Mr. Griffin, where he would badmouth people of the in the committee, including me, where we had a treasurer that resigned because he wouldn't let her see the books, but wanted her to sign off on financial reports that she had that he had worked up. And there were just things that you cannot run a party like that. You just cannot. You can't run a party telling everybody in the state of Mississippi that you think your executive director is, not as accomplished as you are, when your executive director has actually more than 6 years recent political experience and does know and is well trained and does know what they're talking about. So Chairman Irving has said often and said tonight that he, wants to spend time with his family, and he has the chance to do it by virtue of his resignation. And the what he did was he withdrew the resignation like 10 minutes before the meeting. So and then immediately filed a lawsuit. So basically, I don't know, because we haven't done anything in the lawsuit, but it sounds a lot like manufacturing a lawsuit to me. So he wanted to stay because he was going to participate in a fundraising. He can participate in a fundraising without being chair. I've never been chair, and believe me, I have participated in many fundraisers. Also of concern was our state party is poor, and the chair before Chairman Irving got us in the black for the first time in probably 20 years. We had a building that was falling down. We got into a building, and most people were grateful for that building because they knew what we had before, but Chairman Irving wasn't. The building was neglected. We had a refrigerator there for people that wanted to come in and hold parties, and or people that wanted to bring their lunch and stick it in the fridge. It was stuffed in an office with the food in it. The Federation went to have their Christmas party there. There was no, and I had told them there was a refrigerator there, but there was no refrigerator there because it was off hidden in a closet somewhere. So there was many things that didn't make sense, and that became concerning. And in fact, unbeknownst to the executive committee, the owners of the building were contemplating asking the party to leave the building because it was being treated so badly. So these are just some of the things, but there was due process because he gave notice he was going to leave. He just wanted to control every single aspect of it into the future, saying, we need this committee, this person's not qualified, this person is, or whatever, being involved in the choice of who would replace him. And these are just conditions that he put out there that the party rejected. So we didn't need his help finding a replacement. We found a great replacement, and we needed to move on from this nastiness. I don't know how you can serve on the state executive committee, which means you have to have the best interest of the party in mind when you're suing the party. I think that's a conflict of interest to prevent, people serving if they've sued. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, but I can tell you this. I've been a member of the DSCC. I've been a member of the United States Women's Senate Network. I have been on the National Finance Council of Mary Landrieu. I've been on the National Finance Council of Hillary Clinton. I've been very active in state politics, and I've seen a lot in the past 30 years while he was on the bench. So that's all I have to say, and I'm going to pass to Chairman Taylor now.
Good afternoon, all. I think protocols have been set with all of the salutations, so I won't waste more time on that. but I do appreciate the comments of former Chairwoman Vicky Slater, and I concur that it was extremely accurate. We're here not because of happenstance. We're here of a huge dust-up that happened prior to this election. And the dust-up was, of course, embarrassing to the state of Mississippi. In fact, I think the caveat that it has not been said, it was also a press conference held to somehow tie together some allegations of improprieties with the DNC and also with the state party, which further hindered our relationship. My time as chairman has been to try to resurrect those relationships and to ensure the DNC that we are functioning above board, that we're functioning at a rate that has not been seen in the state of Mississippi in the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm very confident that we can go further faster. Now, I do want to mention this when it talked about poor performance as far as after the removal of Judge Irving. Yes, we did not win the gubernatorial election with Brandon Presley, but we came within 3 percentage points. We also won a new Democratic commissioner seat and retained an old one. And we re-elected other members as well up and down the ticket, Democrats. In this 8 to 9 months, it has been a heck of a ride, but it has been hindered from prior performances of the former judge. To actively sue this party and serve over 17 members and require that they stop all operations of the Democratic Party, to even seal the door, change the locks, and things of that nature, so that no party work can be done, is contrary to the mission that we all serve on this call. And that's to elect Democrats and also have an infrastructure where our messaging and things of that nature are heard around the state. We know that as strong Democrats, we change policy. And that's exactly what's happening in the state of Mississippi today. We have greater influence because I am a state legislator. We have greater influence now on the House floor and the Senate floor than we ever had before, because now we're taking our message from the streets and from the polls, and now having legislation resulting of that. Now, I'm going to yield my time because I think that Attorney Slater's done a great job in laying out the grievances that the parties had. But I assure you, that in the request that
You're still on mute, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I would suggest that former Chairman Irving has gotten exactly what he's asked for, and that's the ability to resign from the party, the ability to enjoy his retirement, and also the ability to defend his name in several occurrences, including with the appeals committee, this venue, and in a 2-vote election, one as removal and one also as electing a new chair. I yield the floor.
We have a next speaker.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jody Brown. I'm the vice chair of the State Democratic Party. I want to echo everything that Mr. Mumford, Ms. Slater, Chairman Taylor has said. Just the information is in black and white. We had enough signatures to call a meeting. Those can all be verified. We had enough votes for the removal. I mean, again, those can all be verified. Judge Irving clearly put it in black and white that his intention to resign. He had the opportunity to show up to an appeals meeting, and I was there. They weren't. I don't know what else I can add to that situation. There's definitely been a full process. The way that our current chairman was elected was the same way that our previous chairman was elected. So if he's not a legitimate chairman, we haven't had a legitimate chairman since 2020. So I won't take up extra time because there are a lot of people much more experienced and who probably have a lot more information to add. So I yield my time to the next person.
Thank you. Andre Wagner?
Hello, everyone. My name is Andre Wagner, the Executive Director for the Mississippi Democratic Party. The reason why I believe I'm asked is because I have been a component in the discussion that's gone on and a few of the information and a few things going on. As a staff member in the party, I did not directly have anything to do with the votes. I am a member, I work for the party, but I have been a party to some of the emails and the things going on in the office. My role is to, again, serve whoever is the chair of the party and then execute the will of the chair and execute the will of the party as a whole. As the Constitution is written, the executive committee and the administrative committee are the ones who execute the will, but having the chair be the guiding light of it. And so I try to pay attention to those things as they are and as instructed. The only thing I will say is I apologize to take a personal note, but when these emails did come out, I had people who I have worked with in the past from DC or other states that I have lived who reached out to me. I did not send them anything about these correspondence. I did not send out the emails to be publicized in the media. My personal reputation, I understand that Judge Irving also says his reputation has been injured by this, and I apologize if that's the case. That was not my intent to send it out to the executive committee. I just wanted to inform them of the situation. But also my personal reputation has also been affected as well, where I have individuals across the country who I've worked with in the past who've read the emails. And in my opinion, the assault that occurred, verbal, not physical, verbal. And so needless to say, I will say that the email was to me, and just simply saying I was offended by it. And I thought I did the best, most professional thing and simply sent it to the executive committee or the administrative committee so they would know about it. That's all I would like to discuss. If there is any questions, please let me know. And from there, I will give it to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, am I the next speaker? James Hull.
Yes, you are.
Yes, well, good evening to everybody. Let me try and put, from my perspective, everything in context, and it should take only about 2.5, 3 minutes. In the summer, spring of 2020, when I was convalescing in the hospital, I received a phone call from Judge Irving. Judge Irving and I have been knowing each other since 1972, 73. We exchanged greetings. He said that he was thinking about running for chairman of the party. I am going to presume that he knew that the word had gotten out to some degree that I was thinking about running for the chair of the party, but because I had gotten ill with kidney disease, I responded to Tyree, Judge Irving, man, that's great, because I had been praying for somebody like you to step up as chair. We exchanged greetings a little bit more. When it came time, and I worked his name from that time. When it came time for the newly elected state executive committee, of which I was a member, to elect a chairman, I was the person to nominate Judge Irving to the position. I had worked his name. I have no ill will toward Judge Irving right now. I have nothing but goodwill and self-esteem for him. And he was elected the new chairman of the party. 3 months later, when Judge Irving was, assumed his position and opened up the first meeting, that first meeting of the new executive committee was chaos. And that chaos was not mitigated by Chairman Irvin, but actually to a large degree aggravated by Chairman Irvin. It wasn't until a year, I was so disappointed. He was combative, confrontational. It was bad. About a year later, I called Chairman Irving personally, and I said, Tyree, things are not going well. Here are a couple of things I'd like for you to know. First of all, be a little bit more receptive to others. Try to find common ground. And I went on and on and on. I'm not going to rehash that meeting. At the end of that phone call, Chairman Irvin told me he wasn't the problem. The members were the problem. Okay. And so I was on one or two more phone calls, just during COVID. And during this meeting where Chairman Irvin was removed several days earlier, I was called and asked, would I sign a petition according to the Democratic Party Constitution? Would I sign? I said, yes, I would. Now, that was the only, I did not initiate the petition, but I said I would sign it. After that sufficient number of signatures were acquired, then a special meeting was called. I was called back again, and I was asked, if this meeting goes through, what part would I play? I personally, individually, of my own free will and volition said, I'll chair it, because I was very disgusted, disappointed in how Chairman Irvin had comported himself up until that point. When the meeting was called, that was chaos. That was absolute chaos. As far as I'm concerned, the malfeasance is he's not an administrator. He did not know how to deal with people. He did not know how to hear other people. As far as the misfeasance is concerned, he actually, and pretty much of his own free will and volition, rejected the funds from the National Democratic Party to assist us in trying to hold up what was a promising election. After he sued the party, the Democrats' name among a lot of people almost became mud. I have no ill will against Tyree Irvin. I have no bad feelings against Tyree Irvin. But he absolutely was not able to control the party, and he was absolutely not able to reason with other people in the party. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I'm Jamie Franks, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. Let me give you a little bit of my background. I'm a former member of the Mississippi House of Representatives. I served 3 terms there, and my last term I was the majority leader, and I was the Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor in 2007. Then in 2008, I was elected state party chairman, and I served in that position until 2012. Then I was elected state parliamentarian in 2016 through 2000. I'm serving in my 7th term on the state executive committee, and I was reelected for an 8th term at our congressional district convention a few days ago. And also I was elected to be a delegate to Chicago for President Biden. I understand the Constitution of the Mississippi Democratic Party, and I also understand how things work with officers. And to be able to call a meeting, you have to have 25% of the 80-member committee to give notice. That notice was given, and we had a meeting. At that meeting, we voted. 45 people out of 80 voted to remove Tyree Irving from being chairman of the Mississippi Democratic Party. And you say Robert's Rules of Order, then you talk about a 2/3 vote of a section of the Mississippi Party Constitution. Well, that is for removing a member from the committee. That would be like if I did something wrong and they gave me notice, I'd have to have a hearing to be removed from the state executive committee. Tyree Irving was not removed from the state executive committee. He was removed as an officer. Let me read you from the Mississippi Constitution of 1980, Article 13, which is officers. Number 1, executive committee officers shall be elected by and serve at the pleasure of the respective executive committee at the first meeting of the new unit executive committee following the unit convention, and shall serve a term of 4 years or until their successors are chosen, unless removed by a majority vote. Article 13 is clear. It's very different from Robert's Rules of Order or anything else. At any time as chairman, when I was chairman, there could be a vote. Somebody could make the motion, and if it got a second, to remove any officer at any time for any reason. You serve at the will and pleasure of the unit, which means either the state executive committee, the district committee, or the county committee. Everything was done properly. Tyree Irving was removed, and we ask that you uphold what we have done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes, my name is Andre DeBerry, presently serving as chairman of the 1st Congressional District. I don't have much to add to what has been said. I think that those that have spoken prior to me have really kind of given an explanation of what happened and what transpired. Let me just say for the record, prior to Judge Irving being elected as chairman, I had no knowledge of Chairman Irving. So therefore, I have no personal axe to grind. I have no personal situations that have of any sort, either in past, present, or present. Other than the fact that during the tenure that chairman served as chairman, I must say that I found him to be initially quite offensive and dealing with people, and very condescending with certain people who, as they spoke, were not allowed to speak. I give everybody the opportunity to grow into a process, to grow into a position. I would say that that I saw no growth in that area, and so those situations with me was what necessitated my concern with actually voting. That I did not see us moving in a direction that was bringing synergy to the party, but rather bringing a sense of people wanting to walk away. And let me just address this issue about a coup. I think people need to really search the definition of a coup. This was no coup. The process was carried. There were votes. There was vote taken. I think, as the chairman said, Chairman Taylor said, there was 67 people who participated in that vote. 67 out of 80. If 67 out of 80 people participating in something, it's not a coup. A coup would be why a select few did that. And even with the fact that the nomination process allowed and afforded the former chairman to be renominated and still did not win. So this term coup really sticks with me, because I see coup meaning that we did something that was contingent and relevant to what happened on January 6th, and that's not what happened. So at this time, I yield back time and just say that I do wish that we could bring this to a head, because I don't think it's good, but it's not. The party will not die based on whether this decision is reversed or not. Thank you so much, members of the DNC, and to members of this Zoom call.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, David Rushing.
Hello, I'm David Rushing, Secretary of the Mississippi Democratic Party, and I fully endorse all the previous speakers. I think the only thing I really need to add is there was some mention about improper notice, and our Constitution allows 10 days notice unless emergency. And I sent out by email on July the 3rd, 2023, the notice of the called meeting and the reason it was being called. I further texted every member of the executive committee, telling them that I'd sent out this notice, and if there was anybody didn't get it, to call me immediately. I used the most recent list of all the members. Now, sometimes these fluctuate, but I received no calls, and so I'm certifying the committee to this committee that I did send it out as an emergency meeting 3 days before the meeting was called. The other thing I would like to add is that the thing that concerned me about what was going on is that we had no real institutional control because of Judge Irvin, like Andre and DeBerry and James Hull. I have no enmity or bad feelings toward Judge Irving, but we had lost total institutional control. And the thing I believe that created the need to have the meeting was that extremely unprofessional, nasty, and even though I'm not a lawyer, potentially actionable letter sent to Andre Wagner indicates his total contempt for people who don't agree with him. We hired Andre to help us build the party, and the judge had reduced him to nothing more, and I'm going to use it this way, to a glorified office boy. He couldn't get out and organize without sneaking. It was just terrible. And that to me was my main reason for being involved in this. There were a lot of other things, minor, nothing illegal, just poor management, bullying, not listening to people's opinions. And it's been going on since shortly after elected. And like Mr. Hull, I was one of the people who supported Judge Irving in 2020, and I actually signed a petition to call a special meeting. So that's really all I had to add, other than I can say that the number of petitions wound up being 34, 35. I'm on the road. I don't have my total files with me. And the vote to remove Mr. Irving was overwhelming. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Bill Wheeler. Or last speaker. We have
Chair,
1
I
minute.
don't believe we have Bill Wheeler in the room.
Okay. So I think then that concludes the presentation by the challenged party. So I'll turn it over to our co-chair, Ryan.
I mean, I would just like to turn back to the challenging party in terms of the 2 minutes left that they have reserved in terms of giving them an opportunity to respond. You got 2 minutes. I'm not sure who we want to recognize, maybe.
I'm having difficulty. This is Tyree Irving.
Yes, sir.
This is oh my God, can you hear me?
Yes,
sir.
Well, my Surface crashed and I'm on my cell phone now. So I don't know if you can, let me see. I'm trying to start the video. Can you hear me and or see me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can both hear and see you. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. First of all, if you listen to what the witnesses who just testified said, it ought to be pretty clear. You can't have a constitution that requires you to follow Robert Rules of Order and say you can't follow Robert Rules of Order in a Zoom meeting, at least as to the notice to the party. Nobody gave me any notice, as I said. And let me just be clear about this email. I sent that email that has been the subject of the witness's testimony to Andre Wagner and no one else. And if Andre Wagner's testimony is to be believed, that he only sent it to the, I think my computer had crashed and I didn't get all of the testimony, I don't think. But if he said he sent it only to members of the State Executive Committee, then it was the Republicans, in my judgment, who's hiding out among Democrats on the State Executive Committee, who was in fact supporting the Republican candidate for governor, who sent that to the media. And the background as to why I sent what I sent to Mr. Wagner, I don't have any need to share that. I think members of the DNC, some of them, I could name them and I will not, know what that response was, why that was response. If Andre's feelings was hurt, I'm sorry. I am a straight talker. I say what I mean what I say. I didn't, he sent an email that was offensive to members of the DNC, and I responded to him with a copy of my response to the same people that at the DNC, that is, that he had sent the email that prompted my email. That does not justify, and the allegation that somehow, we filed this challenge.
That's time, sir. That's time, sir.
That time?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good to see you. All right.
Yep. Thank you to both parties for joining us today and for the time and effort you have expended to make your cases. The committee now has 30 minutes for debate. During debate, members may address questions to each party's counsel or representatives. Individuals who are not members of the committee may only speak when recognized by the co-chairs and will be muted by staff when requested to do so by the committee. Members, if you have any comments or questions, please raise your hand via Zoom or send your questions via the chat to Jenna. We will do our best to call on everyone in order. You seek recognition, but please be patient with us, as this is a Zoom meeting that we've all suffered through for many, many, many periods of times now. But give us a little grace. Jenna?
Chair Alex Goff has been recognized to speak.
Oh, no. Thank you very much for calling on me. I was looking for the section of the Constitution where it refers to an agenda. An agenda has to be provided before. And I was just wondering about the timing of the agenda, because I've seen as part of the exhibits 2 different agendas. I saw a first agenda that referred to the malfeasance of the chair. Then I've seen a second agenda as it relates to conduct of the meeting, referring to the accepting of the resignation and then the election of a new chair. And so I guess I was interested about the timing of the 2 agendas being sent to the membership. Thank you very much for recognizing me.
Yes, sir. Do you want to direct that to one of the parties?
Oh, thank you. Yes, to the Taylor side. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If somebody from the Taylor side would like to be recognized to speak, please raise your hand.
I believe David Rushing sent the notice out, and I'd like for him to speak to the mailing out of the agenda and the notice for the meeting.
It's attached to the original notice that was sent out by email. Unfortunately, I don't have my records here with me because I'm out of town, but per the notice, the agenda was attached. And again, not only did I email it to all the members of the party, but I also followed up with a text message by phone telling them it had been sent. I got no kickbacks and no responses. I think I got one from Mr. Griffin, even though he sent one the day later, and I went ahead and forwarded him one. But again, the agenda was attached to the meeting. The one that says, hold on, please. July the 6th, 2023 emergency meeting, the long agenda. And it's followed by, yeah, that was what was sent with it. It was sent on the 23rd and followed up by text messages telling people be on alert and call me if they didn't get it. Thank you.
Chair Clay Middleton has raised their hand asking to be recognized to speak.
Sure, Mr. Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to know when is the next election for the state party.
Who would you like to direct that to in terms of the parties, or would you like to direct that to Mr. Mumford, or?
I can direct that to Mr. Taylor's side.
Okay.
And answer that question. I believe we have 3 weeks until the elections. So approximately 3 weeks.
From today? Yes. All right, thank you.
Chair Virgie has raised their hand asking to be recognized to speak.
Ms. Virgie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just really sad that it had to come to this point that the two parties could not work this out before. And I was going to ask the same question that Clay asked about, is there a new election scheduled for the chairman? And is there opportunity? Is it going to be an open, so anybody who want to run for chair that they can? How is the election going to be handled going forward to either party, to the new chair?
Again, I would, direct that to the state party side.
The election will be held in regular course. It'll be held, it'll be open for anyone who wants to run.
Co-chairs Bell has raised her hand asking to be recognized to speak.
Ms. Bell?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question. And I guess I would direct this question to Mr. Franks. Can you please explain a bit more about the difference between removing a chair and removing a member? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Article 13 deals with officers of the committee, and Article 13 says that each unit, talking about the state party or even the county party, all have chairpersons, and they have other officers. They serve for a term of 4 years, or they can be replaced if a majority of that unit votes to remove them. And in this situation, you have 80 members on the state committee. You had 67, I believe, that participated in that meeting, and 45 voted to remove Mr. Irving. And as a result, that would meet the requirements of Article 13 of the Mississippi Constitution of 1980.
Is that the same process for removing a member?
No, ma'am. There's another article that removes a member, and when a member is removed, you have to send notice, you have to give them an opportunity to be heard, and other due process. Very different situation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Co-chairs, Ms. Wendy Davis has raised her hand asking to be recognized to speak.
Ms. Davis, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question. I understand that I think we said in 3 weeks there's an upcoming officers meeting. I presume that means that's a meeting of their state committee, which it sounds like their state committee has 80 members. When the people who are eligible to vote for chair, I presume are those 80 members, are these the same people same 80 people from this July of 2023, or have there been new state committee elections prior to this meeting in 3 weeks?
Again, I'm going to defer to Mr. Mumford. I believe that falls to you guys. You're on mute, sir.
I would defer to Andre Wagner. He has his hand up, and I think he knows the answer.
Mr. Wagner?
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Andre Wagner, again, Executive Director. Currently going through our delegate selection process. And so the delegate selection process, which was written in the previous administration, allows for, there is 4 congressional districts: the 1st congressional district, the 2nd congressional district, the 3rd congressional district, and the 4th congressional district. Each elect their executive committee members. If you will notice, we're actually in Biloxi. A lot of people who have this background. The 4th congressional district is having its convention tomorrow. And so at the congressional district, they will be electing their new members of the committee. And so the new members of the executive committee will elect a new chair on May 25th. On May 25th, we're electing all the rest of our executive committee members. It's a bit of a tiered process where each congressional district gets to elect 20 members. And then that makes up the 80. We have 4 congressional districts. And so 15 are elected each Saturday. And the last 20, if you do the math, it's 15, 15, 15, 15. And if you do the math, then the last 20 are elected at the state convention. And then once that's over, that will elect the new 80-member executive committee on May 25th. And those 80 members will elect the new chair for the 2024-2028 period.
Thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
And that'll be at the May 25th meeting? Thank you.
Technically, that will take place right after the May 25th meeting. They can choose to have it the next day or an hour after, but it will be that group that's elected on May 25th that will elect the new.
I think he cut out a little bit, but I think we got the gist of it.
Sorry about that. Yes, on May 25th, we elect all the rest of our executive committee members, and then those individuals, those 80 people who are elected, will elect a new chair either an hour after or maybe a day or two after that May 25th meeting. The new chair will be elected for the 2024-2028 cycle.
Thank you.
Co-chairs, Ms. Adrienne George has sent over a couple questions in the chat asking to be recognized to speak.
Ms. George?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jenna. I just wanted to be clear that the results of today's meeting, how will it impact the election next month? Both parties will be able to run for the election. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any other questions?
I got my question and I'm going to be on YouTube. All right. I got my question and I was on camera. I'm going to be on YouTube. You're in and out.
Co-chairs, I do not see any more hands raised or questions from committee members.
Okay. All right, that concludes this portion then.
Sorry, co-chair. Mark Mallory has asked to be recognized to speak.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I got booted off for the last couple of minutes, so this question may have been asked, so I wouldn't have heard the answer. But the upcoming election that is in toward the end of May, is that election normally held during the same period of time?
If I may.
Yes, sir.
This is a part of our delegate selection process. Every year, every 4 years, our delegate selection process dictates that we go through the steps of our congressional district conventions, and then from our congressional district conventions to our state convention. It's actually a little bit longer. We have our precinct caucus, which took place on February 23rd, 24th, 25th, February 23rd. And then in March 23rd, February 24th, March 23rd was our county conventions. And then our congressional conventions were one a week in April. And so we had on April 6th, we had our first congressional district. On April 13th was our second congressional district. On April 20th was our third congressional district. And then tomorrow tomorrow, April 27th, is our fourth congressional district. And then on May 25th, next month, we're having our statewide convention. And that's where all 80 members of our executive committee will be elected, and it will complete out the election. And then those 80 members will then vote on who is the new chair for the party for the 2024 to 2028 cycle.
So every 4 years you go through that same cycle of events, but is it at the same relative time each time it happens every 4 years?
Yes, sir. It takes place.
We're going on.
Our Constitution partners our election process with the presidential primary. And so we are tied with the presidential primary, and every 4 years we have our election along with the presidential primary.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions?
I do not see any hands raised at this time, but please raise your hand if you would like to be recognized. Co-chairs, I do not see any more hands or questions in the chat.
Okay, great then. Thank you for everyone for your thoughtful questions on this discussion. At this time, we will consider a resolution to dispose of the pending challenge. Would any member like to present a resolution to address this challenge?
Co-chair Jean Pelosi has raised her hand.
You recognize Ms. Pelosi.
Thank you so much. And again, I want to echo what my colleague Virgie Rollins said, and commend people for their testimony today and our overall sadness that this could not have been resolved until we met here. I also just want to single out Executive Director Wagner, former Executive Director myself. I appreciate your professionalism and the position in which you have found yourself in, and I appreciate the work that you're currently doing to testify to us, as well as to get ready for your new elections. That having been said, our job is to make decisions and findings, and I believe that we should do so. So I've put forward a motion that we dispose of this matter by reciting the facts that have been presented here in the motion, if we could have that up and circulated for the body. But I do believe that we should put forth a resolution of this matter with a resolution that outlines the chronology of events, but also makes a specific finding, and I wanted to pinpoint that. I think both parties testified, and we would all agree and find the meeting was chaotic with the speakers being muted and unmuted in a confusing manner, and that there was disparaging comments that were being made that do not align with Democratic Party values. Much have been said that this is in the middle of a very contested election for governor in Mississippi at a time when there could have been, in addition to the great Benny Thompson being elected as a prominent member of the Democratic Party from the state of Mississippi. And I do think that was significant. For myself, I find that the notice of resignation was sufficient notice, and the petition signatures constituted notice and due process. Others may have their differences in those findings, but as to what we resolve, I do believe that we should, while taking into account the fact that the meeting was very contentious and that there was an inability for everybody to fully speak on the meeting of July 6, 2023, that there was a duly noticed and conducted meeting of the Mississippi Democratic Party, and that the current chair be credentialed as such for the next 2 months until the new chair is elected. And that is my motion. Thank you.
Great. Do we have a second on this? Is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Val, you're recognized. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Co-Chair, I rise to second Christine Pelosi's resolution, and like her, I believe that the resolution should be should stand for as we're moving into the next election.
Great. I think there was a request. We're posting it, and if we could have someone read through it, I think there was a request. We could do that because some people are having trouble viewing it.
If we could maybe just read from top to bottom. I don't know if staff wants to do that or.
Let's ask staff to do that. Go ahead.
Co-chair, Jenna here, I can read through it. Going off of the screen, in the consolidated challenges of Tyree Irving, Roosevelt Yarbrough, Everett Sanders, and Jean and Sharon Baines, collectively the challengers to the credentials of Chick Taylor, chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party, the state party, and as such a member of the Democratic National Committee, DNC, before the Credentials Committee, the committee of the DNC. The committee recommends as follows. Whereas Tyree Irving was elected to a 4-year term as chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party on July 25th, 2020. Whereas in June 2023, concerns were raised about Chair Irving's conduct. Whereas on July 2nd, 2023, Chair Irving informed members of the state party, state executive committee, SEC, that he intended to resign effectively July 22nd, 2023, and that he was calling a meeting of the SEC for that date to accept his resignation and elect a new chair. Whereas in late June, members of the SEC circulated a petition to call an emergency virtual meeting for July 6, 2023 at 7 p.m. to address the longstanding and repeated actions of malfeasance and misfeasance of the chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party. Whereas at least 36 of the 80 members of the SEC signed the petition, whereas under the Constitution of the Mississippi Democratic Party, 25% of SEC members are authorized to call a meeting, whereas 10 days written notice of an SEC meeting is required except in emergencies, whereupon the written notice and time requirements may be waived. Whereas at 4:57 p.m. on July 6th, Chair Irving sent an email to SEC members rescinding his resignation as chair. Whereas at the July 6th meeting, the SEC voted to remove Mr. Irving as chair and to elect Mr. Taylor as chair. Whereas both parties agreed that the meeting was chaotic, with speakers being muted and unmuted in a confusing manner and using its disparaging comments about other committee members that do not align with Democratic Party values. Whereas after the meeting, the challengers filed the instant challenges alleging violations of the Constitution and Robert's Rules of Order, and also filed a lawsuit against the state party. Whereas after a period of deferral to the state party in accordance with the committee's rules of procedure, the state party dismissed the challenges because the challengers refused to participate in the state party's review process. Whereas the challengers have appealed the dismissal of their challenges to the committee. Whereas the committee held a hearing on April 26, 2024, at which the challengers and Chair Taylor had an opportunity to present evidence and argument on the challenges to the committee. Now, therefore, based on the record and proceedings before it, which indicate that 1, Chair Irvings submitted a letter of resignation to the SEC. 2, this letter of resignation triggered an urgent need to select a new chair during the height of a critical election year. 3, SEC members followed the Constitution's procedures required to call an emergency meeting. 4, under the Constitution, chairs serve at the pleasure of the SEC and may be removed by a majority of the SEC. 4, a majority of SEC members to remove Chair Irving as chair and elect Chair Taylor as the new chair. The committee hereby resolves that the challenge be denied and that Chuck Taylor be credentialed as a member of the DNC until his successor is elected.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to review this now? If so, then per our rules, a proposed resolution will be discussed for a maximum of 20 minutes with time equally divided between the proponents and opponents of this resolution. And if a credentials member wishes to be recognized, please raise your hand now via Zoom and state at the beginning of your remarks whether you are a proponent or opponent of the resolution.
Chair, Mr. Raymond Buckley has his hand raised asking to be recognized.
You're recognized, Mr. Buckley.
Thank you. It was a really sad couple hours. I do think that we should meet at some other time to talk about, this is not the only state party that has run into these things. And frankly, you know, I've been on the New Hampshire State Central Committee since I was 18 years old. So while we never took it this far, we've had some troubles and we've had infighting. There should be a more streamlined way of working with these state parties that have very clear guardrails for the parties. And I think that's something that is not going to be done right away, but I think that listening to the testimony, I mean, it's a shame that we lost that governor's race. It's a shame that we're not doing better. And we should be into mobilization and registering voters and empowerment and community engagement. And there's so much that needs to be done in Mississippi, and we can do well in Mississippi if we do all that. But it's hard to get over that hump, to go from being a struggling party to a winning party. I'm going to vote for it. I'm sorry, I should have said that right at the beginning. But I do think that we need to think about ways of creating a system that discourages this sort of activity. Maybe having some guidelines on what every state party constitution has to have regarding this sort of a situation. I don't know. But I felt really distressed. I wish I had the time. If we weren't a battleground state, I think I would jump on a plane and go and spend a couple of weeks helping them sort this all out. And maybe I'll do that next year. But they need help. They don't need our criticism.
Thank you. Any other hands or speakers?
I do not see any more hands raised at the time.
So I believe then it's appropriate that we now call for a vote on the resolution to dispose of the pending challenge. And a vote in favor of the resolution means that you're voting to deny the challenge regarding the seating of Chuck Taylor as a DNC member, and Chair Taylor will remain a DNC member until the next chair's election. And a vote against the resolution means you are not in support of denying the challenge, and should the resolution fail, we will return to debate. I will now ask Helen to call the roll. And members will be unmuted when your name is called. If you would like to vote in favor of the resolution to reject the challenge and seat the members, please say aye. If you oppose the resolution, please say no. And if you're holding a proxy when that person is called, please respond to cast their vote. And I also know that committing to something as hard as credentials, this credentials challenge is done through a love for our party. And I appreciate all parties' commitment to the Democratic Party and am appreciative of their efforts. So let's go on then. Call the roll.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Walters has his hand up right now.
Okay, let's recognize Mr. Walters.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I moved to my telephone and my thumbs are too fat, so I wasn't able to respond as quickly as possible. I would simply, and it may be too late, but it seemed unnecessary. I'm for the resolution, and will vote aye. But it seemed, given the high emotions that exist in this controversy, that the repetition of the words malfeasance and misfeasance, even though I think it was done in the context of repeating what somebody said, is inflammatory to the conflict there. And I think at the minimum, we can recognize former Chair Irving's distinguished career. And I think those are fairly loaded words that I hate to have in the final resolution of the Credentials Committee's action.
Okay.
I would make that in the motion. I'm not sure that I can do that in the same breath, but I would make the motion simply to strike those two words.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Any debate? Any members wanting to raise their hands? Seeing none, I don't see any hands. And okay, then I believe those are accepted.
You got one.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that as a friendly amendment. I was repeating.
I couldn't see.
I was repeating the allegation. Thank you.
Chair, Miss Wendy Davis has her hand raised and has asked to be recognized to speak.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm having a hard time seeing the screen share of the resolution. I would just love to see that segment. If you could pull that, like at one point it was big on the screen and now it's back little again. If you could just show that change, I really like to know exactly what I'm voting on. So we're taking that whole section out, or are we just removing?
I think you take out to address the long-standing repeated actions of malfeasance and misfeasance. Is that the section that we're taking out, staff?
I think just period there. I think it's just.
Yeah, I just leave it like that. Yeah, take that out. Can you see all that, Ms. Davis?
Yes, thank you.
Is that feasible for you, Ms. Pelosi? Is that good? We're okay with that?
We are taking out, well, they called a meeting. I just want to be precise in what we're saying. Can you put it on the big screen here? Yes. At 7 p.m.
It should stay, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we have it, it's all in the record anyway, so it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, I think if I could just say, I think it does lose some. I mean, my feeling, it's two things. The cause for I think that you could say to address the actions of the chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party without using the two words, but they are addressing the actions, because if you believe that the email itself constituted malfeasance, that's a question, I suppose, for another time or another venue. Mm-hmm. But they are addressing the actions and the to address the actions and the emailed and the notice of resignation of the chair. Mm-hmm. The actions and notice of resignation by the chair. I believe that addresses my colleagues' concern that they not use malfeasance and misfeasance, but at the same time, it also addresses the purview of this committee, because the meeting was in direct response to the resignation, and the cancellation occurred 2 hours before the meeting. So I believe it's to address the actions of the chair. And that could encompass both the actions in the email and anything that was subsequent to that. So let's leave it vague. Thank you.
Okay.
Are we all good with this new language?
Any opposition? No?
Co-chair, just wanted to flag, Miss Wendy Davis has her hand raised, asking to be recognized to speak.
Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
Yes, I like having resignation in there. I don't care how you put it. I think it seems that the meeting was called to address his resignation in addition to the action. So I think the resignation being in that section we were talking about, I think would be helpful.
It's in the sentence above.
Yeah. He intended to resign? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So it's not redundant? Okay.
Co-chairs, Mr. Alex Goff has raised their hand asking to be recognized to speak.
Sure.
Thank you. I just want to say later in the resolution, there's a reference to the members having voted to remove the chair. Looking at the agenda and items, I think the members voted to accept the resignation. That was what the secondary agenda had said. And so I was wondering if we needed to update that. Yeah, it's even further down, I think. Again, voted to remove. I think they voted to accept his resignation. So I just want to offer that to the body. Thank you.
Do we want to change that then? Voted to, to accept the resignation? Instead of to remove, to accept the resignation of Mr. Irving? Okay, is that fine?
Well, Ms. Pelosi has her hand up.
Right.
Yes.
Is there somebody here who can tell us what the actual vote was? Because in effect, he was removed. In effect, he was replaced. But what was the actual? Is there somebody here who could tell us who took the vote on July 6th, what the vote was? I read the notes as being they voted to that they said he had resigned. They were acting based on the resignation, declared a vacancy, and then elected a new chair. But if somebody was there who takes issue with what the actual vote was, then we could change it.
Ms. Pelosi, we're looking into this right now, but I do see that Andre Wagner had his hand up and perhaps could assist here, but we are looking on our end as well.
Go ahead, Mr. Wagner. You can help us out. Yeah.
I just wanted to let that our attorney, Mr. Mumford, was trying to be recognized, and the party secretary, Mr. David Blunt, is on as well.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Hello?
Okay. I think the vote was to remove Mr. Irving. At that point, he attempted to rescind his resignation. And so I believe the action says action on Mr. Irving. And so I believe it is true that he was removed and not that they accepted his resignation because he had attempted to rescind it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh. I don't know if any thoughts on that, Ryan?
I mean, I tend to agree with, at least in terms of what the information we have says that it's they voted to remove. I mean, I don't think they did, present evidence associated with saying that he submitted the resignation and then he tried to pull back the resignation. I mean, that's all part of the record, but ultimately they voted to remove him. You know, that's the way I would characterize it.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts on that? Any other hands raised? I don't.
Ms. Virgie.
Co-chair, yeah, Ms. Virgie has her hand raised.
I agree. I think we should make sure we have the language right. If he was, if it was, they accepted his resignation, or from what I understand, he was removed. And I think we should make sure we got the language correct.
Mhm. Okay. Voted to remove. It's there.
Co-chair, Mr. David Rushing has his hand raised, asking to be recognized.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm reading from the minutes of the meeting. In item number 7, said Mr. Hull then opened the floor to a motion to remove Mr. Tyree Irving as chairman of the Mississippi Democratic Executive Committee pursuant to the petition authorizing the emergency meeting. That's what the motion was.
Thank you. So he was voted to, he was removed. That's what.
Yes, ma'am. Just want to let y'all know about
Yeah,
that.
no, we were
Thank you.
correct. Yeah, that was how I read the case as well. Thank you.
Okay. Any other hands up? No. Mr. Irving, I think, has his hand up. Mr. Irving?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, apparently y'all been operating this evening on a different set of facts that are not the facts. I thought only Republicans did that. If you will look at the agenda for the July 6th meeting, and I heard some members say that they had seen 2 different agendas. Well, if they did, it was some sort of secret meeting that was not a part of the July 6th meeting. Item in the exhibits that I submitted, which is, if you look at Exhibit D, Exhibit D contains the agenda for that meeting. And item number 5 says, motion on exit of Tyree Irving as chairman of the Mississippi Democratic Party. There's nothing in that agenda about accepting the resignation of Tyree Irving. If you read,
well, I mean, and Mr. Irving, I mean, this is really limited to the members communicating between themselves.
Well, but I will shut up, but you allowed the other side to talk here during the member session. So that's fine.
Again, as the maker of the motion, that I'm a Democrat, and I read the evidence presented before me, and it appears there was a motion to remove. That has been validated by both the challenger and by representatives of the former chair and representatives of the current chair. So as this Democratic group prepares to vote, I think we all want to assume best intentions here, which is that we read the materials in front of us and that there was a vote to remove. I think it's a fair question that somebody asked. Was it in the minutes? It's in the minutes and it's in the documents that we read. Anyway, I'd submit it for a vote and call the question.
Thank you.
Co-chairs, Mr. Aguilar has sent a question in the chat asking to be recognized to speak. Mr. Aguilar?
Yes, I was just wanting to call the question as well, wondering if we could call the question and move forward, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Co-chairs, there are no other hands raised at this time.
I believe the questions were called. I mean, Helen, the motion was originally, we got a motion, got a second. Now, I mean, it's time for Helen to do the roll call, right? So Helen?
Mr. Chairman, you've exhausted your time for debate first. So you
Thank you, ma'am.
you don't have to deal with
we're Democrats. We're a little long-winded.
You don't have to deal with actually calling the question. You've exhausted the time under the rules for the committee members. With your indulgence, Mr. Chairman and Madam Co-Chair, what you did without objection was make an amendment to the original proposal from Ms. Pelosi. That amendment was the one articulated by Mr. Walters. It was discussed briefly. It was shown on the screen, and the chair, Supervisor Solis, asked if there was any objection to it, and there was none at the time. The other matters that you discussed, she asked for additional information, and y'all ultimately did not make the change that Mr. Goff started off with. So what you are voting on is the original proposal with the minor change to remove language referring to misfeasance and malfeasance. Now, because y'all have spent 15 minutes talking about that, I'm restating it just so there's an opportunity if anybody objects. Okay, I see everybody's head shaking. So I'll start the roll call. Thank you. Mr. Aguilar.
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar votes aye. Ms. Barnes.
Aye.
Ms. Barnes votes aye. Mr. Buckley.
Aye.
Mr. Buckley votes aye. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Ms. Davis votes aye. Mr. Dignan.
Aye.
Mr. Dignan votes aye. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry. Okay. Ms. George.
Aye.
Ms. George votes aye. Mr. Goff.
Aye.
Mr. Goff votes aye. Ms. Hernandez-Matz.
Aye.
Ms. Hernandez-Matz votes aye. Mr. Jacobs gave his proxy to Ms. Barnes. How do you vote for Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs is an aye. Mr. Cap? Did Mr. Cap leave?
He directed it to me, Supervisor Solis, and I vote aye.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, Mr. Cap votes aye. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee votes aye. Ms. Young Hong.
I vote aye.
Ms. Bell votes aye. I'll not wrap my tongue around it again. Ms. Lucas. Okay.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, aye.
Ms. Lucas votes aye. Mr. Mallory.
Aye.
Mr. Mallory votes aye. Ms. Maxwell.
Aye.
Ms. Maxwell votes aye. Ms. McBride had given her proxy to Mr. Buckley.
Aye.
Mr. Buckley, on behalf of Ms. McBride, votes aye. Mr. Middleton.
Aye.
Mr. Middleton votes aye. Mr. Newman.
Aye.
Mr. Newman votes aye. Ms. Pelosi.
Aye.
Ms. Pelosi votes aye. Ms. Penske.
Wayne is quicker, yeah.
Aye.
Ms. Penske votes aye. Ms. Pringle. Ms. Rollins. Ms. Rollins?
I vote aye.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Rollins votes aye. Mr. Romero?
Aye.
Mr. Romero votes aye. Ms. Ruiz?
Aye.
Mr. Ruiz votes aye. Mr. Valdez?
Valdez votes aye.
Mr. Valdez votes aye. Mr. Walters?
I vote aye.
Mr. Walters votes aye. Do the chairs care to exercise their vote?
Ryan?
No, and historically, we don't vote unless there's a reason for it to sway the decision.
Fine.
Well, the tally is 27 aye, 0 no.
Hi.
Well, thank you all. Thank you. This is the tireless work that we all do as Democrats, unpaid, sitting here to try to better our country and try to make the best decisions we can. So thank you all other Credentials Committee members for your thoughtful attention and consideration of this matter. I really appreciate your commitment to this committee and to our party. It's hard work sometimes. It's not fun to sit through some of these meetings and listen to some of the stuff that's going on. But I really appreciate all your hard work to help us get to a finish line here. I also want to thank the challengers and Chair Taylor for their work in partnership with this committee. I know this issue has taken a significant amount of time and effort on both parties. And I also know that that committing to something as arduous as the Credentials Committee challenge is done through a love for the party. And I appreciate all the parties' commitment to the Democratic Party and am appreciative of their efforts. The recommendations of the Credentials Committee on how this challenge should be resolved will be submitted to the full DNC as a part of the report of the committee. Thank you again to the DNC staff, our parliamentarian, Helen McFadden. Sorry, I can say your name better than I can say parliamentarian, our council and our technical support team. And thank you to all of you for your service on this committee again. We have completed our business as such without objection. This meeting is adjourned and have a wonderful weekend. And Helen's got her hand up.
Yeah,
Helen? Did I do something wrong?
No, I did. I gave you the wrong tally because I did it in my head, subtracting, and it should have been 25 ayes and 0 noes. Not 27. It was 25.
All right. Well, I rely upon my kids to do math. Math is hard. The younger crew are far better at it than I. So I appreciate it, Helen. And again, thanks everybody. And like I said, without objection, this meeting's adjourned, and have a wonderful weekend. And thank you for spending a Friday evening with us all, trying to do our best. Thank you.
Thank you all. Been a pleasure.